Welcome to Thriving Thoughts, a podcast for women who believe in thriving in any and every circumstance. Every week, we have candid conversations with remarkable women about how they silence the little lies in their minds and overcome their shoulds, coulds, and not enoughs with big truths. I'm your host, Dr. Sherry. Now let's thrive. Hey sisters, welcome back to another episode of Thriving Thoughts, Stepping Out of Shame with my friend, my brave, authentic, y'all, she said she had a vulnerability hangover after this. Yep, that's my friend Layla Solms. You guys are going to want to listen up to what she has to say. Listen, she gets real, sisters, about what it's like to live in shame, to live in secrecy, to live in the practice of deceit, and to carry that weight. Layla shares with us all about her shopping addiction, how that started, what it looked like in the process of that, how it kind of grew, and eventually how she came face to face with her need to banish that, to recover from that. Layla even gives us some insights into an organization called Celebrate Recovery that she is a part of, and just how much that's blessed her life and helped her still digging into this process of recovering, still digging into the root of why she felt so compelled and so fulfilled by this shopping addiction. Listen, sisters, if you're listening today and you have an addiction of your own, I don't care what it is. It could be alcohol, drugs, shopping, work, making your home look nice. Yeah, all of those things can be an addiction if they put us into an unhealthy place and put us into a place that meets some need that maybe is unseen or unspoken. You are not alone, and you do not have to live under that dark cloud of shame anymore. So please join me today and listen to the wisdom and truth my dear friend Layla has to share with you, and the truth and love she has to speak over you as you too walk out of shame. Hey, good morning, Layla. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of Thriving Thoughts. I'm so privileged to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sherry. I'm thrilled to be here and thankful for this opportunity. This is my first ever interview that will be dropped as a podcast.
Awesome. So, but you're a pro at interviews. You've had other interviews?
I have had other interviews. Yes, definitely. Yes.
Good. Well, even if you haven't, this is just a conversation, and I'm certain, Layla, that you've had lots of conversations in your life, right?
Oh, multitudes.
Are you a chatty? Yeah. Are you a chatty Cathy?
I am a
social
chatty
butterfly?
Cathy. Yes, I am. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think what's really cool is I want to give a little cred to social media platforms, because that's how you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I can't remember. I think we met because we were we are both members of the Hope Writers community.
Yes.
Little plug for them.
Yay!
If you don't know who they are. Yeah, go check them out, hopewriters.com. So we are both members of that community. And so I think that's how we initially connected. And then we just started following one another on social media. And then, so you guys, this is so funny. So I one day I was, in my news feed scrolling, with my thumb up and down the phone, and I came across a post that you had made with some goals that you desired.
Yes.
And can you share with us what some of those goals were that you listed in that social media post?
Yes. So they include learning yoga and Pilates in a way that maybe I could be licensed to do that.
Okay.
I'm also interested in learning to be a life coach.
Okay.
And I also listed that I would like to have a podcast, but I also included that I would like to be interviewed on a podcast so that I could share my recovery story.
Yes. And so that little message, that little plea was presented right before my eyes. And so I just said, well, it so happens that I have a podcast. Yay. So let's chat, right?
Yeah,
and so we
definitely
did. And So we got to get on the phone, and that was the first time that we talked to each other, was actually yesterday, over the phone. And so I'm just delighted to have you here. I think social media gets a bad rap most of the time. I think people are like, oh, it's so negative and oh, it's a bad place. But man, it's what you make of it. You know, it's kind of like with ourselves. Like if we focus on what's good about us, we're going to see the good in us. If we focus on what's bad about us, we're going to see the bad in us, right?
Definitely.
Similarly with social media, right? If we
I
focus
agree.
on, yeah. So let's focus on what's good about social media because I found something good. I found Layla Solms. Layla, I'm so glad you're here with me today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, hey, let me ask you a question. You said that you really wanted to share your recovery story.
Yes.
So, what does that mean? Because I think that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Oh, yes, certainly it does. My recovery story, for me personally, is recovering from a shopping addiction and credit card addiction, and then the aftermath, which includes debt, and then
Yeah.
damage of trust in my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that this recovery journey is tricky, even to the point. Not that one hang up or habit is worse than another or more severe than another.
Sure.
But the idea that even going to a phenomenal group like Celebrate Recovery, there is no specific share group represented for those of us with credit card debt or a shopping or spending addiction. So I had to kind of, weasel my way in, I guess, in the open share groups. I think that I think that Celebrate Recovery acknowledges and has that, as an option. But I did quite extensive searching on their website and called around to several different locations in our area. And no one currently offers that specific topic as a group. So,
Well, girl, what are you waiting for? What are
I
you
know.
waiting for?
Well,
Are you
you
going
know
to start
what?
that group?
So actually, I would love to start that group, and you're not the first person to mention that to me. Actually, so I am currently in the STEP study, which is a separate from your weekly meeting in CR. I'm in a STEP study, and this is where we do our personal inventory, our spiritual inventory. Celebrate Recovery is similar to AA in that you do work through the 12 steps, and you do find a sponsor, and you do have accountability partners.
Okay.
So, So the framework of Celebrate Recovery is that you are able to sponsor someone and possibly lead an open share group after you have completed your STEP study.
Understood.
So we're a few months out. Yes.
Okay.
We're a few months out at least, possibly a year from me being eligible to lead something like that. But that's definitely on my radar.
Yeah, yeah. So, hey, take us back, Layla. Take us back to when you were in the throes of this shopping addiction, of racking up credit card debt. When you were in the throes of that, what did your life look like?
Okay, so my life looked like a lot of secrecy, a lot of waiting for the mailman, rushing out to the mailbox, rushing to find, the credit card bill, and then hiding it somewhere.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So lots of deceit.
Oh,
you know, what's interesting about that is I think, because I'm glad that you said, there's no one addiction that's more severe or more harmful than the other, because when you look at the psychological toll that you're talking about here, about living a life of deceit, of living a life of secrecy, the weight that is carried with that is so enormous.
Yes.
And that parallels the weight that alcoholics have in hiding their addiction, that drug users have in hiding their addiction. I mean, this is gambling.
Right.
It's all this very similar process. So thanks for pointing that out. So it was a life of secrecy. So what were you doing? What were you shopping for? What were you?
So I was shopping for, back when these behaviors first started, I was shopping for stuff for the kids and for myself and sometimes for my husband. So, we lived kind of out in the middle of the nowhere. And so to get to the nice mall that had the nice stores was a whole day's undertaking. And
Okay.
so shopping online for, cute stuff for the kids, in the clearance section, and being able to dress them up, the way I wanted to for Sunday, or,
Sure.
just that sort of thing. So I was kind of spreading it, equally. But I will say that as time went on, my husband began to question, okay, why did the kids have this? I don't remember us. Because I need to give my husband a lot of credit in that he has never put us in a situation where we haven't had what we've needed. He's been a fabulous
Yeah.
provider, hard worker. I mean, stepped up to the plate, more times, than most men that I know.
Yeah.
So it's none of this should ever be a reflection on him or his willingness or his capacity to provide. And that
Right.
was kind of the complexing, that was difficult for my husband to accept, and very perplexing, I guess is the word, for a
Yeah.
lot of people once they became aware of my addiction, is that, they people who know my husband know he's a wonderful person, and a good and kind-hearted human, and very loyal. And so, again, further heaping the coals on my head then, like, Layla,
Yeah.
what the heck,
Well, and but what that highlights, Layla, is that ou- ours, and I think this is particularly relevant if we look at other people, when sometimes we say, oh, they're doing that because of me.
Mhm.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yes.
People do things and make decisions based on what's going on within them, and not because of something that somebody else is or isn't doing. And so I think that's a great point to highlight, that your behaviors your choices were not a reflection of your husband.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, okay. So it started off with you shopping for stuff for your kids, and
Sometimes for myself, sometimes for my husband, and then it progressed.
okay.
And it progressed into asking, let's see here. It progressed into taking out credit cards under my own name, like maybe the Old Navy or the Gap credit card, whatever.
Like store credit cards.
Yeah, store credit cards, yes. And so shopping, and then those were only in my name. And then so running out to the mailbox, grabbing that bill. And then I learned, it's amazing what we learn as we're trying to bury our secrets and to cover our tracks, is that I learned to not take all of the mail out of the mailbox, but only to take out what I wanted to hide, and then leave the rest for whoever else happened to want to get the mail.
Okay. So yeah, boy, that's some planning, right?
Oh yeah. And again, the weight, the burden of that, the shame, the heaviness, that put on me mentally and spiritually, it was just excruciating. And yet I continue to dig deeper. So
yeah. So question for you, who handles the finances?
So my husband has always handled the finances. And so the way that I was able to, for a while, limp along and keep the creditors at bay was that I did some, when this behavior first started, I was doing some babysitting at home. And so I would just take some of the babysitting money, because it would vary from week to week. Kids would be there a certain number of hours one week and not the same the next. So my paycheck would vary. So then what I would do is I would go to the post office and I would purchase money orders to pay the bill, to pay the credit card bill for the store credit cards. And so this was, this again, a big undertaking, so I would pull my kids in the wagon to the local library, and then we'd make a stop at the post office on the way home, and mommy would purchase a money order and purchase a stamp and send off the bill payment in the mail, and then just go about with my life.
And at the time, the rewards of getting things, which, I want to get into a little bit here about what that means to you. But the rewards of getting things were outweighing the heaviness of the secrecy.
For a time, yes. The reward outweighed the consequence.
Yeah. So what was the reward for you? And now here's my guess, Layla. My guess is that you didn't really know what the reward was for you, psychologically speaking, because otherwise then you wouldn't have been doing it, right? You would have found a healthier way to do that.
Yes.
So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about kind of when you started to come face to face with yourself, and have you discovered, what it is that reward was doing for you? What psychological or spiritual or emotional need was that filling for you?
I'm still digging down to that truth.
Okay.
There were like the minimal incremental rewards or feelings, the adrenaline or whatever chemicals are released in the brain, when you, like, let's say find a good bargain, and then, ooh, yay. And
dopamine.
So, the dopamine. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yes, the dopamine rush of placing the order, and then the dopamine rush of getting the thing in the mail, and then going off to my room to tear open the package. It really kind of felt like a birthday or a Christmas every time an order came in the mail.
Yeah. So question, how did you hide the purchases? You worked hard at hiding the bills, but certainly there were new things that you were wearing or you had.
Right. Yes. So sometimes I would just blatantly lie. Like I would take the purchase and I would hide it, I would put it on a hanger, and then I would put it near the back of my closet, and then slowly but surely it would come out, into the light of day, and I would wear it, and my husband would say, "Oh, I haven't seen that before." And then
Oh, this old thing?
Yeah. I remember being like, well, this was in the back of my closet. And that excuse worked for about a month.
Right.
My husband is a pretty smart person. And I think over time, I would come up with a new excuse, it went from, this was in the back of my closet too. I got this at Goodwill or such and such, or, the neighbor lady, gave it to me or whatever. Just this crazy. And I have to say that, like, I'm keeping my composure and sharing this right now.
Yeah. Sure.
But I haven't shared these details with anybody since one of my therapy sessions, close to a year ago.
Right place. You're in the right place, girl.
And so this is, I'm feeling like I'm starting to get this knot in the pit of my stomach. I'm smiling, but the guilt and the shame, the knot is the guilt and the shame of recalling my behavior and recalling the secrecy, towards my husband. Just
Right. And that's that conviction, that kind of sick to my stomach, that what was I doing? What was I thinking kind of thing. But here's the deal, that what we do too often is we don't talk about these things. There are a lot of women living in shame and secrecy for something. It might not be an addiction. It could be anything.
Right.
But they are living in shame and secrecy. And so, one of my podcast guests, Jessie Kretzer, one of the things that she said, God does not waste your pain. God does not waste your shame either.
Right. So,
and that is not, shame is not of the Lord. Shame is from the enemy, right?
Right. Yes.
And so we can just put that where it is and say, no. What we're doing is we are bringing to light the things that other women need to hear somebody talk about and go, me too, girl. Like, me too. Thank you for being brave enough to share that. So Layla, thank you for being brave enough to share this.
Well, you're welcome.
And, and here's the bottom line. I think a piece of the shame comes from our fear of judgment from other people. But what I know is that we might judge publicly, but in secret, we're like praising you. Do you see what I'm saying?
That's refreshing. Can I share a quick little?
Yeah,
sure. So in this path to recovery, I took it upon myself, and this has been just about a year and a half ago. I volunteered to share with a local moms group. And turned out the night that I went, there's only about 3 or 4 moms there. And I really thought that even though it was in our local community, I didn't know the faces of any of the ladies there. And so I thought it would be a safe place to kind of share anonymously. Like, I walked in and no one there seemed to recognize me, and I didn't recognize them. So I thought it was okay. And after I shared my story, I was so... Well, number one, very vulnerable. And I felt very much laid bare because I had been open and honest and had not withheld, And I remember actually the leader of the moms group looking up at me and saying, well, I appreciate you sharing, but, I can't imagine, I can't even think of anything right now, in my life that is anything like that or that I would need to work on. I guess I probably have some flaws, but, I was just.
I am so amazing. I am such a perfect creature.
Devastated.
Yeah.
I mean, and then we were around the
that's
table.
A lie.
And we were around a table. So it was a very intimate setting. There were like 5 of us total,
Wow.
And then I learned later that another woman around the table actually worked part-time at a place where people know my husband and, that sort of thing. So then I was just doubly humiliated. Apparently I'm the worst sinner in the world.
Right.
And now you know my secret and you know where I live. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
there she is. Let's put a scarlet letter on
And
her.
I just was like, I'm not going to let this stop me from sharing my recovery story and God's grace.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just not. And I'm sorry for that lady, clearly, wow.
Well, here's the truth, so the lie is, here's the lie that comes from the enemy. You are so horrible. Look at you and look at everything you've done. Look at everything that you're thinking. And nobody else thinks like this. Nobody else struggles with these things. Nobody else is like you. Look how bad you are. Right. So then what do? We go, well, if I'm that bad, let me go do it again because that's all I'm good for. Right.
And let me hide away.
And let me hide away in shame.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that every one of us are living in bodies and minds that are being perfected, but are not yet perfected.
Amen.
And every one of us has a struggle unique to us. The Apostle Paul had his own struggle that he 3 times asked for the Lord to take away, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know what that is. There's a lot of conjecture about it, but we don't know what that is. But look, we are in human bodies, frail minds, frail bodies. Mm-hmm. And until the day where we are made to be exactly like him, then as we were intended to be, then we're going to struggle with these things. So the truth is, let's just address that real quick. The truth for you women listening, if you feel like there is nobody else, that you are worse than anybody else, that there is something wrong with you, that you must not be, here's another lie that could lead to. God must really not love me. Like I must not be worth, like something really is wrong with me because otherwise I wouldn't be struggling like this. Right.
Oh yes, definitely.
That is such a lie from the enemy. And look, the lie leads to the shame, right, Layla?
Yes.
And then that shame leads to continued secrecy and hiding.
Yes.
And in that secrecy and hiding is where there can be no healing.
Amen.
It is only, right, there is only healing, there is only recovery to be had when we come out and we start talking about it. And so that's what you're doing right now, Layla, and you're providing an example to other women that are dealing with issues of addiction, whatever that addiction might be, to be able to just start giving a voice to it. It doesn't mean everything gets fixed right away, right?
Correct. Yeah. Things take time, and healing is a process. Recovery is a process. I would say that one of the most impactful things I heard someone say at a large group at Celebrate Recovery was a gentleman stood up, and he looked to be in his 70s. Mm-hmm. And he said, it was on chip night. And so you stand and you walk forward and get your chip for how long you've been sober from whatever your addiction is. Okay. And he said, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I have been sober for X number of years. And, I'm in my recovery journey, and basically he said he had been in recovery for 35 years.
Wow.
And I just thought, wow. I mean, that was so affirming to me to think that, someone is, wow, they've made it 35 years in their recovery. And then also it was a little daunting to me to think, oh my gosh, this is something that the Lord and I are going to deal with and work on until the day I die.
Right. Yeah. And to not let that, I think that's a beautiful truth that you just shared, because I think what we tend to do is we tend to falsely believe that once we've dealt with something, it's gone. And
Yeah.
that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, what really happens is those things, we can expect them to what I refer to as spontaneous recovery. They come back. They just like, boop, there it is. Because, the way our brains are wired, they don't forget habits. They don't forget things that are kind of wired in there.
Yes.
And so it's going to come back to your mind. It's going to come back into your life. You're going to have a desire to do that thing or think that thing again. And I think the problem why people falter is because they don't expect that to happen. They don't expect that to come back. And so when it does, it freaks them out. Like, no, I thought I dealt with this,
Right.
And yeah, so great truth there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this. How many years were you in your addiction, or how much time passed? And at what point, like, why and how did things start to shift for you?
So I would say, boy, when I first started the shopping behavior, the secret shopping behavior, that must have been in about 2003, 2004.
Okay.
And it sort of ebbed and flowed in that my husband did finally catch a store credit card bill and confront me.
And when was that?
Boy, that was probably in 2008.
Okay, so you were doing this for a good 4 or 5 years before you were caught, quote unquote.
Yes. And then and my husband had his suspicions along the way, but I was able to convince him and, manipulate the conversation to a point where, he just gave up,
Okay.
But then it came back around, I want to say in, 2012 or so.
Okay.
Boy, I'm not, I'm a little fuzzy on the dates.
That's okay.
But I would say that finally what the tipping point for me was when I had incurred about $2,500 worth of debt on one credit card and about $1,500 or $1,700 on another.
Okay.
And the credit card company had finally resorted to calling the second phone number on the original application. And the second phone number was my husband's phone number. Okay. So they were calling him asking for, when payments were late, they were asking him for payments.
Okay.
And so he's like, why am I getting, phone calls from this credit card company and this store card? Why am I getting calls? Do you have debt that you're not telling me about? And so in that moment, there was no more hiding. There was no more lying. And I just
Well, you could have, certainly, right? You could have tried to manipulate your way out of that, but you didn't. And so was it kind of a relief to you?
It was, except that it was a relief, except for how angry and hurt and upset my husband was. And he was like, honey, you have broken my trust again, and I do not know how I am going to get past this. He's like, do you not care about our relationship at all? Wow. Do you not care about our marriage at all? For how long you have been lying to me about this, I don't know how much I can trust you anymore. That was devastating. I can remember standing, in our kitchen, and just weeping and having him be so angry that he could barely, hold the conversation. And then me just feeling like, what am I going to do? Part of me just wanted to cut and run, but where?
Right.
Right. And my husband.
Cut and run because of the shame you felt?
Yes. Yeah. And not knowing how to dig out of this, problem that I had created for us financially. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of years and time and deception.
A lot of practice of deception.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how that conversation in your kitchen took place about how long ago, Layla?
just about 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. Very recently.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's still raw.
Okay.
It's still raw. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, can you, before we move on to the kind of what's happened in the last 2 years, can you touch on the not the concept, but the fact that when you are dealing with something on your own, and it's an issue that for you internally, and it's not a reflection of somebody else, but how that behavior, how those choices, how your, basically just your mind, your mental capacity, how does all of that impact the relationships around you?
Oh, wow.
I know that's a loaded question.
No, it is. And it really did impact relationships. In fact, I can remember my husband asking me if any of our friends knew, because then, the question behind the question is were any of our friends holding my secret away from him?
Right.
And the truth is, no. I mean, I never once shared this secret with anyone. None of my female friends, nobody in Sunday school, nobody, here, there, anywhere, not even any friends, online friends, from social media, whatever. I told no one.
Now, did you ever have an urge to?
I did.
But yeah,
I did have an urge. And I had an urge to tell one of my friends who is actually she and her husband had some financial issues, but they were both spenders. And so they were kind of in it together. You know what I'm saying? And so they neither of them were hiding it from the other. They both knew they were kind of in the same boat. And so I felt, and she would have been a very safe person to tell. But again, I, considered and gave it enough thought that I didn't want to tell anyone that would feel that they needed to share it with my husband, because I didn't want to put them in that position.
Right.
So that just isolated me even further.
Yep.
Yeah. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. But talk about the, particularly in a marriage, trust breeds a level of intimacy that, that strengthens the bond between two people. And so when you are living in shame, it's really difficult to continue to draw closer to somebody when you're experiencing shame. The natural tendency is to withdraw, to retreat, to isolate more. And so is that kind of what you saw happening within your marriage, with your relationship intimacy, not necessarily physical intimacy, but your relationship intimacy over that span of, over a decade?
So I would say, looking back on it, I would have to say yes. That it did, put a wedge between my husband and I. That said, we enjoy being together so much and going places and doing things. We've always been committed to having a date night, going out without the kids, spending a day together, listening to podcasts together, reading books together, having really good conversations, planning for the future, all of that. And so in some way, I was able to limp along and still maintain that. It wasn't, I wasn't going out and doing things with other people to avoid my husband.
Right.
It was just an internal, perpetual dialogue that was very exhausting, of always trying to maintain that secrecy and keep that part of my behavior boxed away from our relationship.
Right.
I'm sure if we had a video feed of those 10 years, we would be able to look and see and point out, where all that was. And maybe that's something I just haven't had the wherewithal to really examine or investigate.
Yet
in my journey.
In your journey. Yeah. How about your relationship with your kids?
So I did my best to hide it from them, and they were young enough that they, at first didn't catch on. But then in more recent years, yes, they started to figure out, okay, that mom is buying some stuff and dad is irritated with how much she's spending. And, they sensed that tension. So yeah, that's, I felt like I betrayed them, and that oh, that I was not setting a good example for them,
Yeah.
not setting a good example for them as a person, as a child of God, as a wife, as a
Mm.
mother, as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that did damage our relationship. That is
Right.
not a big conversation we've had, openly. That's again
Okay.
probably something else that needs to
Yeah.
that
Maybe
needs to come to
as you
light.
continue on in the steps or
Right.
whatever, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. So give us some insight. What's been going on for the last couple of years since you and your husband had this come to Jesus, so to
Right.
speak?
So I enrolled in mental health counseling.
Okay. Good for you.
Started seeing a wonderful counselor that has been super helpful to me, and we have been digging down to try to find,
Okay.
the root, to find,
Hmm.
what it is that was, sparked in me, this need to shop and lie, and all of that. I will say that some of our conversations have been very blunt, as in, I remember she said to me early on, with an alcoholic, you can just go and like just not be around other people who drink, and you
Right.
can just not drink. She's like, but
Right.
a spending addiction is completely different, in that you can't live your life without spending money.
Right.
And drilling down to find, okay, what really are the necessities, having honest conversations about money and budget and
Mm-hmm.
finance
Mm-hmm.
within our marriage. So those have been, big major talking points. How does
Yeah.
a person navigate through life and not overspend, and stay
Right.
within the budget, and be a meaningful contributor to the family income,
Mm-hmm.
without, with, yeah, and all the little conversations about money,
Yeah.
so that has
Well,
been difficult.
for sure, because we operate in a world that operates on money.
Right.
Um, and and also not going to the other, not taking that pendulum and going to the other side,
Correct.
right? Not
Yes.
like going, I'm going to secretly spend everything, to I'm spending nothing. I
Right.
refuse to do this. Like,
Right.
you've got to find that middle ground where you
Mm-hmm.
are able to demonstrate some behaviors of restraint, behaviors
Yes.
of self-control, right?
Definitely.
That's
Definitely.
what we're talking about here.
Yes.
But that self-control and that discipline and that recovery process is all for naught unless you are surrounded by a community of
Mm-hmm.
support. So tell
Definitely.
us about your community of support and how that's working for you.
So my community of support for more than a year has been my participation in Celebrate Recovery.
Okay.
And I've been sharing a ride with a young woman from our community. And so we have great conversations to and from.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that has been super helpful.
So you guys are kind of like accountability partners, not on
Yes.
purpose, but
Hmm.
accidental
Yes.
accountability
Accidental.
partners.
Yep. Accidental accountability partners. And she recently finished her step study. So, yay, her. Anyway,
Yeah.
so the Celebrate Recovery Monday night services for more than a year have been the best church and loving and gracious and
Mm.
accepting community I have experienced in a very long time, to the point where I'm like, this is what I want Sunday morning church to feel like, where we can all be
Oh,
honest, where we can
girl.
all be
Hey,
transparent and vulnerable,
right.
and not
Yeah.
pretend.
Stop it with the window dressing, people.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah. Let's get
I
real.
really have to say, the Celebrate Recovery um, situation, has been a huge amount of support for me. Um,
Hey, Layla, are you
yes,
allowed to give us a glimpse into what those meetings look like?
yes. As far as like attendance and all that, that part is confidential. But what a Celebrate Recovery meeting looks like, at least at the location where I participate, is it's a 2-hour session, and we meet on Monday nights. And the first hour is praise and worship music, a testimony, a lesson, Once a month, it's chip night. And we're all together, men and women together of all ages. We recite we recite our, my mind is blank.
That's okay. Is it like
yes.
Oh, it's okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And then someone will share a personal testimony, and just to hear other people's stories of God's grace and redemption in their lives is so refreshing and so affirming. And then in the second hour, we split into our open share groups. And so they have share groups. So men do not participate in groups with women.
Okay.
So the men have their own groups. And at this particular location, there's 3 or 4 different groups for men and 3 or 4 different groups for women.
Now, are they topically driven?
Yes, they are topically driven. And so they offer hurts, habits, and hangups topics anywhere from women with sexual addiction to women who are in relationships with men who have a sexual addiction.
Okay.
We also have a group that focuses on self-worth and self-esteem and setting boundaries. Mm-hmm. And they really encourage us, and this seems to work well, that you can be in a group for as long as you want. You can be in that open share group as long as you want. But as you dig down and as God reveals to you other issues of hurt, habit, and hang up in your life, then you are free to float to a different group and begin exploring that hurt, habit, or hang up in that group. So you're not locked in.
So now, is it a revolving basis? So let's say somebody out there listening right now is intrigued. You've piqued their interest into Celebrate Recovery. How do they find a Celebrate Recovery near them? And is it something that you can just show up to, or is there like an application process? Like, is it similar to AA in that you just find the meeting and you show up?
You just find the meeting and you show up. Celebrate Recovery has its own website, and I believe that it's celebraterecovery.org.
And we can include the link to that in the show notes too.
And then you just find a location. So you search your state, you search your region, and then it's just like if you're searching for a restaurant, within a chain, you find a location, you find the address, and then you find out, what church it meets at or what location, and then you just show up. Yeah. And it's completely anonymous and confidential. So there's no registration. There's no, now you can, make friends with people who are there and contact each other, but it's completely confidential in that they don't run a roster or take attendance.
So, okay. I'm a woman thinking about going. I'm on the fence about it. Maybe you were on the fence at one point, Layla. I don't know. Maybe you were thinking, oh gosh, am I going to have to go in there and spill my guts to a bunch of strangers? Am I going to be able to go in there and just sit and take it all in? What happens if I see somebody I know? These are kind of questions that I imagine people are thinking. So can you maybe address those?
Yes. So you are welcome to attend Celebrate Recovery and never say a word. You are able to show up for the large group and even the open share group, where you can sit and listen and you don't ever have to share, and you only give your first name. And if you're not up to sharing that evening or any evening, you just say pass when your turn comes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And as far as if you see somebody there, you smile and you give them a hug, or you look the other way. We all have an understanding that if you want to hug people that from your community, you're more than welcome to do that during greeting time. But if you want to pretend like you didn't see them and they didn't see you, it's pretty free that way. And they remind us, actually, there are rules. There are rules for large group, and there are rules for open share group, and they review those rules every week.
Okay.
In that you don't run up to somebody at Target and say, hey, I missed you last Monday night. Where were you?
Right.
Completely confidential. And you can even agree to never acknowledge each other in public.
Right. So this is so funny. It reminds me of, so when I used to have a traditional clinical psychology therapy practice. And I would tell people, so I did groups and I did individual, but I would tell people, this is kind of a small town. We're probably going to run into each other. Mm-hmm. So here's what I'll do is I'm not going to even acknowledge you. I'm not, which is, that's one of the reasons I got out of the field though, by the way, because we need to just be able to be humans and be people with each other and not kind of exacerbate the stigma by saying, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm going to act like I don't know you. Mm-hmm. So I would say, I'll let you take the lead, and if you see me and you want to say hi, you can come say hi or whatever. And so, some people, were excited to see me, and some people would yell across the grocery store, I'll see you tomorrow, Dr. Sherry, and yes. Other people would be like, oh my gosh, walking with their hand over their face, please don't look my way, please don't look my way, please don't look my way.
Exactly.
And both of those were okay. That made me, I respected both of those. But also I think in a group setting, Layla, there is a tremendous amount of vulnerability. In fact, most people who are going to seek mental health counseling or therapy or anything like that want to do it on an individual basis for a couple of reasons. But I think there's a lot more safety to be had in an individual setting than there is in a group setting, because you can trust, hopefully you can trust your therapist or whoever. You can trust them to hold your information in confidence, because they're legally bound to do so.
Correct.
But you can't always expect that of group members who don't have that same onus, right?
Correct.
But I think that part of I have been on the giving end and on the receiving end of group therapy. So I've been a participant in group therapy, and I've been the facilitator of group therapy. And I'll tell you, it's like anything. Nothing good comes without sacrifice or pain. No reward comes without that.
Definitely.
So this is what somebody said to me. I was in the group, and the facilitator, and I didn't even know I was doing this, but we were talking about something pretty sensitive, and it was bringing up some memories for me. And I didn't realize I was doing this, but I was digging my heels into the carpet, underneath my chair. I was literally digging my heels in.
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, you're digging your heels in, Sherry. What's going on? And, but it was so super cool, because what I discovered is that I wasn't alone. You see, when you're in an individual basis, you're still alone.
Correct.
But when you're in a group, you discover that you're not alone, even though my issue may not be the same exact thing as your issue. And in fact, probably is not.
Correct.
The level of vulnerability and the level of disclosure that people begin to practice makes you start to feel safe.
I agree. Yes. And I would say, as far as anyone being concerned that you may be discovered, out in public by a fellow.
Discovered. That's a good word. Yeah.
I kind of equate it to, and I don't want to make light of this, and I can be an oversharer, so I'm not super concerned if people know. But that said, it reminds me of when you're a little kid and you're praying around the dinner table and you open your eyes and you see someone else with their eyes open during the prayer. Well, are you going to tattle on your cousin who had their eyes open? Because guess what? Right. You only know they had their eyes open because your eyes were open as well.
Yeah.
So if you run into someone in public and you're like, hey, celebrate recovery, buddy. Yeah. And they're like, oh, and it's like, hey, you've outed yourself.
Right. So, and there really is no outing, because there really is no shame in doing something to benefit yourself. So
correct.
Layla, thank you for being so candid and sharing with us your part of your story. I know there's a lot more to your story just based on our phone conversation yesterday. So I'd love to have you back maybe in season 2 to talk some more about some things from your childhood that you mentioned to me, and to just see how you're doing.
Sure.
See how things are going for you and celebrate recovery. So as we close out today, Layla, I like to do a couple of things. One, I would love for you to share with the women listening one piece of truth, one thing that you want them to remember when this podcast episode ends, that you want them to remember and never forget. What would that be?
Oh, I would want women listening to know and never forget that God's mercies and grace are new every day.
Mm-hmm. Every day.
Every day.
Yes.
And that, I think I equate it to the manna from heaven. It's a fresh batch every day. It's not, if he started with 10, you used up 6, you've got 4 left. No, you get 10.
Say,
you
get
mean
10 it doesn't dry up?
It doesn't dry up. It doesn't run out. It's not a diminishing balance. It's not like a gift card. It doesn't diminish.
Ooh, I know there are some of us out there breathing a sigh of relief right now over that truth. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Layla, how can people reach out to you, connect with you? Maybe it's somebody that's not quite ready to look into Celebrate Recovery, but they'd like to chat with you about your experience. How can they connect with you?
Well, right now, I do not have a live website, but I am super accessible on Instagram.
Okay. What's your...
And my profile is public.
Okay.
My Instagram handle is at LaylaBonnieBlue.
Okay.
And
Layla Bonnie Blue.
Layla Bonnie Blue. That's my first and my 2 middle names.
Okay. Girl,
and
how'd you get 2 middle names?
My parents were hippies. I was born in 1974. My mom is an eternal romantic, and she loved the movie Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
Again, that movie maybe doesn't really hold up so well now, but 45 years ago plus, when my mom was a young person, that movie was meaningful to her. So Bonnie Blue from Gone with the Wind.
Awesome. I love that. And the name Layla too. Like your name is just kind of like a flowing in the breeze.
Yeah, well, that's an Eric Clapton song.
Yes,
so.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. All right. So at Layla Bonnie Blue on IG. And then are you on Facebook at all?
I am on Facebook. I am on Facebook. And I want to say, I'm going to have to open up my app here real quick. I have managed other people's accounts in the past. And so I got to make sure that I actually know my own name on Facebook.
Yeah, girl.
Actually, on Facebook, I am just Layla Solms. That's it. First and last name.
All right. Got it. Awesome. Well, we'll include those links in the show notes. And I'm super excited to have met you, Layla. And thanks for sharing your time with me this morning. I'm very grateful to get to know you a little bit better and for you to share your heart with my listeners.
Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity, and it has truly been a blessing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, girl. And I can't wait till tomorrow morning with that new fresh basket of mercies.
Amen.
All right, girl. You have a good day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
As always, I'm humbled you chose to join me this week for Thriving Thoughts. It's women like you who listen, subscribe, and give us thoughtful reviews that allow our message of thriving in any and every circumstance to reach even more women who need a healthy dose of truth speaking. I'm Dr. Sherry, and I'm grateful to be your Thriving Thoughts host, where we're shifting perspectives and speaking life to you so you can thrive. Be sure to tune in next week and share this episode with a friend. Until then, remember, overcome your little lies with big truths.